Now, US President Joe Biden has arrived in Vietnam after the G20 summit in New Delhi for a two-day visit. Biden is expected to sign off on a comprehensive strategic partnership. And according to US officials, Biden and the leader of Vietnam's ruling Communist Party are expected to announce new cooperation on semiconductors. Along with this, they are also expected to hold detailed talks on supplies of rare earth minerals. Now, these minerals are used in the manufacturing of high-tech devices like mobile phones and electric car batteries. This visit and the deal on semiconductors and rare minerals come at a crucial time. Just last month, the Biden administration moved to restrict US investments in Chinese technology in areas like semiconductors, quantum computing, and artificial intelligence. Vietnam also shares US concerns about China's surging assertiveness in the South China Sea. Similarly, it is crucial for Vietnam to upgrade its diplomatic ties with the United States. Till now, Vietnam has had top-level ties with Russia, India, South Korea, and China. Ahead of Biden's visit, a New York Times report accused Vietnam of secretly arranging a meeting to buy arms from Russia, which is a violation of US sanctions. The US Deputy National Security Advisor, John Feiner, while speaking to the reporters, acknowledged Vietnam's decades-long military relationship with Russia. However, he claimed that there is discomfort in this relationship from the Vietnamese side, and now the country wants to diversify away from those partnerships. The visit also comes after reports suggested that United States military is in talks to develop a civilian port in the remote northernmost islands of the Philippines. Now, this new development may affect US-China relations further, as the proposed port lies less than 200 kilometers away from Taiwan, the central point of tensions between United States and China. Now, to decode US President Joe Biden's visit to Vietnam further, I'm being joined by VOA correspondent Jessica Stone from the newsroom. Jessica, welcome to this broadcast. Now, President Joe Biden has reached Vietnam. This, of course, comes after the G20 summit. Can this be seen as an extension of his trip, or should be seen in an independent light?
Yes, and at this moment, we're waiting for him to begin a press conference that he's giving there in Hanoi with the top Communist Party official, Win Ho-Truc, and the two of them have been engaged already in meetings. They'll continue again tomorrow. This really can be viewed, I believe, as an extension of what began here in India for this president. The president didn't have China's president or Russia's president to contend with, so there were no direct conflicts, conversations with his counterparts. What there was is an opening for the United States to really master how to better counter China in conjunction with the global South. And so the U.S.-India partnership obviously plays very heavily into that, the accomplishment of adding the African Union to this bloc, as well as initiating some reforms with the global financial institutions. And of course, on display too was that announcement during this time of an infrastructure deal that can counter, at least conceptually, the Belt and Road Initiative. White House officials say it's more transparent, it's less coercive. So the design here is really to provide alternatives around the world, and that is what the U.S. president is doing in Vietnam as well.
Right. Now, interestingly, there is a visible bid to deepen US-Vietnam ties. We are also seeing some reports of Vietnam chasing a secret Russian arms deal. Could you tell us something about that?
Well, I don't have any more details than what the New York Times has reported, but they reported that according to an internal document they obtained, that there are conversations about weapons purchases. You know, this really shouldn't be a surprise in the sense that Vietnam and much of Southeast Asia relies heavily on Russia to provide its weapons, and Vietnam in this case is trying to increase its military might, rebuild its military in the face of an aggressive China. Vietnam, while being a communist brother and sharing a border with China, is also very concerned, as you mentioned earlier, about what's going on with the South China Sea. There are competing claims between these two countries about shoals and islands, and And China is now, of course, using its Coast Guard for recon, almost as enforcement of what it says is its territory. And that release of the standard map just in the last 5 days from Beijing certainly did not go over well in the capitals of Southeast Asia. And I just want to point out the parallel here with India because, of course, I was there in Washington covering the state visit there for you. There's a big component there as well of Washington trying to give nations that traditionally depend on Russia for their arms an alternative. We saw that with the agreements that were reached and continue to be discussed, the drone deal between the U.S. and India, and of course that GE engine deal. So this is all part of an agenda to counter China in the military space and in the economic space.
All right, Jessica, before I let you go, just one last question. Now that the G20 summit has concluded, do you think the U.S. President's G20 attendance achieved everything it was looking for?
I certainly think that's what the White House will tell us, but there is great disappointment in Washington about the lack of tough language on Ukraine, and that the people of the United States, while they may not be closely following this visit, will respond to that. And I think that may be on the negative side, but what's on the positive side here is that they've moved forward on a number of climate goals that many Americans share. And I do think that this visit to Vietnam will really resonate with veterans in particular who have seen what was once a very caustic relationship and a very confrontational relationship between the U.S. and Vietnam really grow and blossom into one where both of their interests are increasingly converging. And that's very needed. It's a needed part of the healing for the Vietnam veterans, many of whom were not welcomed, of course, with open arms back in the United States and really are seeking reconciliation over what happened more than 60 years ago between the two countries.
All right, thank you for all those updates. That was VOA correspondent Jessica Stone with us.